Welcome back to Off the Carousel on Field 68, our introduction to all 60-plus first-year head coaches across Division I. Today, getting to know new UTSA coach Austin Claunch. Coach Claunch was an assistant on Alabama's Final Four staff this past season. Before that, won a pair of conference titles at Nicholls State. Coach, thanks for taking the time.
I appreciate it, Kev. It's good to be here. Thanks for having me on.
So I guess I want to start with the UTSA transition, because I think this is probably unique even for what you anticipated. You took the job right around Selection Sunday, as I recall, and you wanted to finish it out with Alabama and wound up being with Alabama probably longer than I think a lot of people anticipated. Can you take me through what having two jobs for March was like?
Yeah, no, I mean, you said it. It was an interesting experience. It was a whirlwind for sure. Yeah, listen, I'm not sure anyone necessarily, like you said, thought we'd be playing 3 weeks into March. We lost in the first round of the SEC tournament, which is around when I was offered the job. And then, yeah, I mean, of course, I told Dr. Campos, of course, I felt like I owed Coach Oates and wanted to stick it out there. I mean, I loved Alabama. And again, it was my first NCAA tournament. I had never been to the tournament before. So I really wanted to embrace that moment and try to obviously do everything we could to win every game that we could. And I guess, again, that's genuinely why they call it March Madness. I mean, we get in, we win our first game, and then we sort of get in a nice little rhythm. There's some upsets along the way. And then you look up and you're playing in a Final Four, which was pretty indescribable. So, that 3 weeks, now with that being said, I was doing so much work for Alabama and then also trying to start to get organized here in San Antonio. So, not something that necessarily I hope to have to do again. But with that being said, it was a great problem to have, just in terms of a lot of success, when it comes to Alabama last year making that run, and then also getting this job here was really exciting.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I'm sure that the recruiting pitch of, hey, can you take another week? Like, I got to go coach in the Final Four before we come visit. Like that feels like a pretty potent one. But like, how were you balancing your time? Like, I envision you like sitting in your hotel room until like 1 a.m, like grinding like synergy clips and like watching all these portal guys. Like what did that look like as you were trying to plan out the UTSA stuff?
Yeah, listen, well, it was impossible not to at least start to focus on some of the guys that you wanted to add and bring in here. But honestly, that all came secondary. I mean, again, the NCAA tournament, I've dreamed my whole life playing the NCAA tournament, coaching it, whatever the case may be. And I had been really close. I mean, at Nicholls, we won 2 regular season titles, but had lost in the conference tournament, so didn't get a chance to go. So again, this was my first tournament, and you always just hear how it flies by, right? And even making it all the way to the Final Four, 3 weeks, almost 3 weeks, it still flew by. I mean, it feels like such a blur when I look back at just Spokane to LA to Phoenix and went back to Tuscaloosa between LA and Phoenix. I mean, it was just such an incredible experience. Every day you just woke up, so eager to get to work and worry about Charleston, Grand Canyon, North Carolina, Clemson, and then obviously UConn. And so it was pretty easy to focus in regards to getting it, getting our work done for Alabama for me, just because that's an experience that does not, it doesn't happen every year for you, and I was excited to get here, but like you said, I mean, shoot, it's a great sales pitch and ultimately, just a great recruiting experience to be able to say, hey, I've not only coached at that level, but when it comes to making it in the NCAA tournament and then going and winning games and, being 80 minutes away from a national championship. I mean, to say it out loud, it's pretty crazy when I say it out loud. So, it was certainly, it was easier than you think. It was easier to go on less sleep. You know what I mean? I had 2 good opportunities in front of me. So it wasn't hard to get up in the morning and get to it.
You're 34 now. But it feels like you've been around for a while because you got your first head coaching job when you were 28 at Nicholls. I'm curious about that experience, right? I mean, very few guys get thrown into the fire as young as you were. And I think you only had 2 years as an assistant under your belt before you got that call at Nichols. Like, take me through what that first year as a head coach was like and what you learned from being the youngest head coach in Division One.
Yeah, I joke, with people that I felt like a young head coach my first year, and I have not felt like a young head coach since. So, I look back, I think back a lot about year one, and I think I wanted to. I don't want to say I didn't know what I was doing, but you learn so much about yourself. Um, what's important to you. I think one thing you've got to, quite frankly, learn as a coach is, how when you lose a game, how can you lose and still sleep at night, right? Like, what are the things that you really value? What are the things you believe in? And what's the identity of your program and yourself as a coach? And I think that's something as a first year head coach I was still figuring out. I had some different ideas, and I had so many ideas that I didn't do a good enough job kind of building the foundation of our program in terms of keeping it simple and being really good at simple, which is sort of a philosophy of my own coaching mantra. But so yeah, I mean, I look back at year one, and I will say this, those guys played hard. I wanted to come out here and probably do a little bit too many things, really on both sides of the ball. But the one thing I felt we always did was those guys came out and really, really competed. I remember when we went to Destin and played in the Emerald Coast Classic, and I remember that the night before our first game, and we ended up winning both games. The night before the first game, we went in there, we went live for about 45 minutes to an hour, and we do this drill. It's kind of this loose ball kind of drill, and it got knocked into the stands, and there were two guys running for it. And I remember one of our guys went running full sprint and jumped over the benches into the stands and got the ball. And I don't know. Again, we might not have had the best X's and O's my first year as a coach, but we competed, man. We really did. I remember getting on the bus and I was like, good practice. And the bus driver was like, that wasn't a practice. I don't know what that was. I haven't seen something like that. So again, I really just, I tried to create an environment where these guys were going to compete every single day. We weren't the most talented group that year. We could shoot it a little bit, but more than anything, we came out every night and really competed and just cared about winning.
Yeah, Nichols, for people that don't know, is like one of the least funded programs in Division One, and it's just not a place where there's a lot of resources to win. The fact that you and Richie Riley, before you built that into a power in the Southland, was, I think, a surprise to a lot of people in that league. I think at one point I was told your recruiting budget was $1,000. Like, how did you find a way to win given some of those limitations? Again, not to knock the place, right? It's just that there's not a lot of resources there to go get it. But how did you navigate being at a job that was so limited and had so little history of success, and how did you turn that thing around?
Yeah, I think, again, first and foremost, like any job, you find guys that are going to match your personality and your style of play, and you go out and you identify those guys and, do the best job of getting those guys, to campus. Whether we didn't have a huge recruiting budget. Now, to be honest with you, like with COVID happening, Zooms and things like that became really popular. And when, you were sort of able to build relationships that way as well, if you weren't able to get out there and see them in person as much. So quite frankly, that was a big help. But again, I think just when it comes to building a culture, like, people, if you haven't seen it done in person, I think it could be, hard to understand the work that goes into it. Coach Riley was really the pioneer behind like the revolution in Nichols basketball. I mean, he they had, I think, one winning season in 25 years when Coach got down there. I came as an assistant coach. And a big part of my, excitement for going down there was, I believed in Coach, and Coach Riley believed. I mean, he said, we're going to win the league in year two. That was what he said. That was his, that's what we're working toward. And to be honest with you, Coach Riley was one of the first guys that really, really took, bought into, taking transfers, because that was when transfers had to sit out. Right. And so I mean, heck, he took 2 all-league guys that sat out a year. In fact, one of them was the head coach at Nichols now. And and uh and so yeah, he took, Tavon and Rod and those guys, you think about now sitting out and just having to do that and get acclimated at a place, and you're away from home. And those guys believed in coach's vision and trusted him as a man, right? Not just as a coach. And then they played in year 2, and of course we ended up winning the league. I ended up doing the same thing. I sat out. Excuse me. I sat out 3 guys as transfers my first year as a head coach. That ended up being 2 of them were all league players. The following year we finished second my second year. So, listen, just like any school, just like any situation, you've got to figure out. Every school is different. Every school has different obstacles. And you've got to figure out those obstacles and figure out how to get over them and put the best team on the floor. Nichols, we found our niche and kind of just certain guys that we wanted to recruit, and we made it work. We're gonna have to do the same thing here at UTSA, right? It's not the, it's not the school in the American with the highest budget or anything like that, but it's got a community behind it that loves sports, loves this city, loves to get behind theirs. So no, it's a similar sort of situation. But I'm really excited, and I think we're going to have a team that's really going to compete this year in the American.
Whether you are a world-class athlete or a podcaster like me, we all understand the importance of mental and physical well-being and proper recovery for top-notch performance. After a 6-month season loaded with cross-country travel, I can promise you that proper recovery is a priority for me these days. That's why I'm excited that Unified Healing is sponsoring this episode of the Field of 68. Unified Healing is a new and super innovative global network of wellness centers powered by Energy Enhancement System, or the EE system. If you haven't heard of the EE system yet, you'll want to listen up. This technology promotes wellness, deep relaxation, purification, and rejuvenation. Whether you're here in New Jersey or at one of the hundreds of other locations across the globe, access to a center is easy and affordable. If you're interested in experiencing the EE system technology for yourself, go to unifiedhealing.com/unified68 to learn more and find a center near you. That's UNIFYD healing.com/UNIFYD, the number 6, the number 8. No material or testimonials on the Unified Healing website are intended to be viewed as medical advice or as a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Always seek the advice of your physician or other qualified healthcare provider with any questions you may have regarding a medical condition or treatment, and before undertaking a new healthcare regimen, including the EE system.
Yeah, just quickly on the Alabama experience. I'm sure leaving sitting head coaching position to go back to being an assistant was a challenge, but take me through some of the things you learned from being at that level and working under Coach Oates. I mean, I remember last year we ran into each other at Peach Jam, and you're like, "Yeah, this is my first time at one of these things," and I was like,
No doubt.
"What do you mean? Like, I've been a head coach, I've never been to Peach Jam." Like, what were some of the things you got to learn by coaching at that level that you think you'll be able to use now that you're at UTSA?
Yeah, I mean, I think, listen, we're in the American at UTSA. Like, don't get it twisted. I mean, this is depending on who you want to ask, high major, P5, it's mid plus, whatever. The fact of the matter is, we're running in those circles where we're going to the Peach Jams, we're going to the Under Armour circuits, we're going to 3SSB, where we're looking for guys at that level, right? Whereas at Nichols, we weren't necessarily, doing that as much. Didn't have the budget to get there anyway. But being at Alabama, just in that regard, certainly you're making, a new network and a new web, of people that, at that level of the grassroots game, that you just wouldn't have met as much or had as much conversation with, before. I think, the other side of that is, I think just, you mentioned being hard going back to an assistant, to be honest with you, if it would have been for somebody else, it would have been much harder. I think Coach Oates just does an incredible job of, sort of not even allowing, but like pushing, you as an assistant coach to, have your own voice, take ownership of a lot of things within the program itself. And I think that's what makes Alabama so special. I think his leadership, as not just as an X's and O's coach, but really as a CEO, is a guy that, when you talk about running, an organization and a program, I think, Coach Oates is as good as anyone that I've ever been around, at sort of empowering, everyone, around him and below him to, come in every single day and try to be their best. So hopefully I'm able to do the same thing here.
UTSA is a place that, feels like it's growing like across sports, right? Like its football success has been phenomenal, moving up to the American now. Like how much of that is a sell when you're deciding like what jobs you want, right? Like that you're going to a place that, has so much momentum as an athletic department.
Yeah, no, I'm gonna be totally honest. Like I when I went to Alabama, I didn't have any anticipation of leaving after a year. Like I thought 2, 3, like a couple of years, like, of course I wanted to be a head coach again one day. But I also felt like I could really learn and go to NCAA tournaments and be around, one of the, best minds in college basketball and coach guys that are going to play in the NBA, every day. And so I wasn't thinking, oh, okay, I'm going to leave here after a year. When this particular one came about, it's in my home state. It's in the American Conference, like you said, which as a coach, you're trying to get to a league that has at-large bids, because you don't want to have what happened to us in Nichols. I mean, we won twice, in the tournament. Now you're not in the NCAA tournament. So, and coach understood that. Again, it just, I think, speaks a lot to just his character and how he really wants us to, reach our own dreams and our own goals as professionals. And, again, this was one I just couldn't pass up for all those reasons you just mentioned. And on top of it being in my home state, the American, the momentum behind this athletic department is crazy right now. And, even for our program, we just had a brand new practice facility break ground, and there's just a ton of momentum behind the city as a whole. What Coach Traylor's done with football, like you said, is really incredible. As a guy that's followed this athletic department, the last time they went to the tournament was 2011. They were in the Southland, and now just a little over 10 years later, we're in the American, and it's obviously it's a different beast. I mean, we've got to step up, our game, and if we're going to compete for championships in the American, there's a way we've got to operate on a daily basis. And I feel like under Dr. Campos, this athletic department is really, really taking the necessary moves to make that happen. So it's an exciting time to be at UTSA, but honestly, just in San Antonio as a whole.
What does that look like from a basketball standpoint? Like what is the blueprint that you have to lay out, in year one and beyond to get this program to compete at the top of the American?
Yeah, I think, I was actually thinking about this last night, just in terms of sort of go back to a few minutes ago when I was talking about my first year at Nichols. I was so anxious to just come out here and win immediately, which I still am. But I think I have a better understanding of what I want to do this summer, right? Like in terms of just the process, phase 1, phase 2, phase 3. We've got to build what we're going to be about. Now we've got to win as we build. I'm not interested in moral victories or anything like that. I think we have a group here that I've brought in that is gonna that's gonna be anxious and ready to compete from day one. But that none of that matters if as a staff we don't do a good job putting these guys in position this summer to understand what's important to us on offense and defense, and just really have a base for who we're going to be as a team. I think that's the biggest thing as we look to build this thing. I'm not looking to be here for a year or two. Like this is home, and ultimately we've got to have a foundation. And when an understanding of when teams walk out to play UTSA, what are they getting, right? And that's the biggest thing in year one. We've got to win while we do that. Don't get it twisted. We've got to do that for sure. But more than anything, I want our identity and our culture to be built this year.
Last thing for you, assuming that you're not coaching in another Final Four next year, never say never, but
San Antonio,
home team. Say.
Home team, baby. Mm.
It's in San Antonio. You got to give us the scout. Like, what is the guide to a great weekend in San Antonio? If as the new head coach of UTSA.
Well, listen, I'm still getting the spots myself. I mean, obviously, there's plenty you can do down at the Riverwalk. I think everybody knows that. I think if you're looking for the for the local stuff on the weekends, at least around up this area, you got to come out to La Cantera, 1604 area. You got to come hang out with us, up here on campus. But listen, the cool thing about San Antonio, and even I'm still kind of getting used to all the different areas, is anywhere you go, man, you're gonna find a great time with great people. Like, I mean, and I knew that. Like, I used to come to San Antonio as a kid pretty often. It's going to be easy to find good music, good food, and just good vibes everywhere around the city. I mean, these people, they're accepting, they love. Again, I mean, I personally think it's the best place to have the Final Four. I think a lot of coaches agree with me too. I know that I know some of the Midwest guys love Indy. I would have to go with San Antonio. I'm a warm weather guy and I'm a Mexican food guy. So, again, it's by the time you get here, Kev, in about, what is it, 9-10 months from now, I'm gonna have the full scout for you, and we'll make sure we get you some good food and a good time.
Yeah, we need some dinner reservations. That's all.
Yeah.
Anything you got to plug for. But we appreciate it, Coach. Thanks for taking the time.